We've talked about escaping input already, back in the chapter on active record where we learned about conditions. But it's an important enough topic to mention it again here in the context of working with forms. Our concern about escaping input is that a malicious hacker might try to put some SQL code into one of our form fields, and then when our form is submitted, instead of executing the SQL that we had planned, our application runs the SQL that the hacker injected. That's why it's called SQL injection. And I've given you just a very simple example where if the parameters come in as username, if we just drop that parameter into the string username equals, then it'll construct SQL that will always return true. It won't actually do what we intended, it'll do what the hacker intended instead. This is a very simple example. There's lots more complex ones where you could end up having data stolen or deleted. The solution is a simple one. We just have to be very careful to always do it. And that is to escape all user entered data. So anything that comes in from a user, we don't automatically trust it. Instead, we're going to process it to make sure that any SQL that's in there is rendered harmless and turned into just a basic string instead. Now, it's not just form parameters that we need to worry about. That's probably the most common, but it's also anything in the URL string. It's also possible to tamper with the values that are in a cookie. And last of all, we need to be aware of the data that's already in the database. Now, this one sometimes people don't think about because they think, well, if I'm escaping the SQL when it comes into my application, then I should never have to worry about it. At that point, it should be safe. Well, that's true if you were, in fact, 100% reliably escaping all the input. But if you had one page in one place that didn't do proper SQL injection, and that data gets through and makes it into the database, even if you come back and patch that security hole, you've now got polluted data in your database. So it's a good practice to just always escape anything that ever originated with the user. Now, as we saw earlier, Rails escapes condition clauses that use hash or array formats. So for example, if we let the user do a search for different subjects, we would have subject.where, the name is equal to whatever the user had submitted, and visible is equal to 1. And Rails would then automatically escape those values before constructing the SQL string. If we needed some more complex SQL, then we might be better off going with the array format. This is where we get to write any SQL that we want as the first argument of an array. But instead of putting the values straight in there, instead we put question marks as placeholders, and then put those values as the additional elements of the array. So if we had 3 question marks, we would have a string plus 3 values. In my example, I just have 1, name equals question mark, and then user query will be escaped before being dropped into this string. Notice that I did not escape visible equals 1 because that's not user submitted data. That's something that's static that I as the developer have set. So I don't need to escape that. If it was something the user was setting, then I would need to escape it as well. Now, condition clauses are one of the 2 most common places that we use user-submitted data. The other one, though, is when we actually assign values to our attributes. We set the values of an object before we save it to the database. Well, Rails will automatically take care of escaping those values for you. You don't have to worry about it. So if we have a subject and we want to update its attributes, we can pass in a parameters hash, and Rails will take care of doing all the escaping for us. So you won't even need to think about it. But the condition clauses, you will need to make sure that you use one of these 2 techniques for anything that is user-entered data.